A makeshift camp on the outskirts of Bamako. It's one of those camps for displaced people in the Sahel that are under threat by the spread of the coronavirus. Here in Senu, hundreds of families are trying to survive on a daily basis with no social distancing possible. A small water fountain supplies these 500 displaced people. It's not enough to adhere to systematic hand washing or hygiene measures recommended by Mali, which already has more than 400 confirmed coronavirus cases. On this morning, Ibrahim visits those displaced people from the Pearl community who fled the violence in the Mopti region. He heads an association, which is one of the rare ones to continue to come and support these families. On these mats, 2 women fell ill after having recently left the camp. No one knows what they're suffering from, and they weren't put in isolation. Without access to medical care, they took this herbal tea to try to get better. Like many international NGOs, Ibrahim doesn't hide his concern for these vulnerable groups if the virus spreads in the camp.
It really scares us to even visit them, to go to the city and to come to visit them. It makes us fear, but we have no choice. There is coronavirus out there, but here we have no choice. For example, look at this house. How many people are here? There are almost 19 people who share these 2 boxes. What distance can we put here? If there is only 1 case of coronavirus here, we need to know that we are all buddies.
Despite the virus, the daily emergency for these displaced families is being able to feed themselves in this camp, which depends on food donations from NGOs. Donations that have become rare with economic crisis linked to Covid-19. Living in fear of hunger is another nightmare for Aisata, still traumatized by the flight from her village a year ago. She's been raising her 4 children alone since the death of her husband, who was killed in an ethnic massacre in central Mali.
I do not feel very good here. It is difficult to find to eat. Donations do not arrive regularly. It is difficult to have even soap or to buy condiments for cooking. This is our daily life.
A few kilometers away, this other IDP camp is set up in a cattle market. Here in Faladi, about 500 people do not have a regular supply of drinking water, exposing more adults and children to infectious diseases, including that of Covid-19. To maintain a minimum level of hygiene for herself and her family, Anta used to go and draw water from a well located several kilometers away, an effort that has become more frequent since the appearance of the new coronavirus.
We have not seen anyone with this disease here, but we were told that it was very serious. Then we were told to wash our hands often before each meal and every return to the camp after we leave.
Each week, dozens of additional displaced people crowd under these shelters, which are supposed to be temporary. To deal with the most urgent, the Malian authorities have just installed 5 water tanks of 2,000 litres like these, offered by an international NGO.
The only measure that we can take here really is to try to see if we can set conditions that will allow people to observe barrier measures.
At the other end of the camp, more and more tents are gaining ground on this public landfill. Despite the health risks, the displaced people are now seeking to survive there. In the middle of the rag pickers of Bamako, this displaced Pearl woman and her family are trying to find some valuable items in this open-air trash can. A search lasting several hours looking for pieces of coal, scraps of plastic, or even food scraps to feed the cattle. It's a waste that the mother hopes to be able to sell in the hopes of earning 3,000 CFA francs or €5 each week.
We receive food donations thanks to the little community, a little rice, sugar and oil. But despite that, we are obliged to come to pick up in the discharge because the donations are not enough. We need a supplement to be able to purchase food to feed ourselves and our children. When I do that, at least I feel active and useful for the people.
The refugees are even more vulnerable than they already were. A few days after filming, a fire ravaged the Faladi camp in which, according to residents, at least 7 people died. The UN is also raising the alarm about the fate of Sahelian children like Hawa, who have been deprived of school for several weeks. Teachers outside the Senu camp can no longer come and teach in what used to be a classroom. 10-year-old Hawa was just beginning to love the school she attended for the first time in her life.
If the teacher comes back to me, I will go back to school. It's sad that the school is closed because I want to continue going to school to learn.
A future that's more than ever uncertain for Hawa and at least 8 million other children in the Sahel who are already out of school well before the start of this health crisis.